For the last 3 decades, these races have allowed this sport's best to battle at the summit of their season.
And Skywalker, an upset winner with Pimpay aboard. And it's Hollywood Wildcat. Eddie Della Hussein dropped his whip, but it looks like he got the victory. And it will be Lure once again, overcoming trouble on the first turn.
We enter these battlefields once again, which lay out the highest gauntlet for each group to face.
Under the line, it's half bridled. It's going to be a 3-horse photo finish in the turn. Here's the wire. Photo finish. Man, oh man, what a day. Personally Perfect wins by 2.
Measuring these by large sums of money involved or the glitz that lies at the wire does not provide a true definition. Instead, the accomplishment of these tests are measured in the difficulty in clashing with its parts.
And what a brilliant filly is this! Golda Cobra in an awesome effort, outrun Kipteville to win it well. Midnight Luke could not have been more impressive. He wins with his ears pricked in the end. This is unbelievable! Zenyatta, what a performance, one we'll never forget.
For 30 years, these days have brought together only those that have proven themselves up for this. The most difficult of challenges. Only the fastest have arrived at this day, but yet only the swiftest of those will be dubbed champions, putting their names next to greatness.
California Chrome shines bright in the Kentucky Derby!
Untappable's got it by a length on the line.
Shared Belief going to just keep his unbeaten record. Yes, he has. Shared Belief, 7 for 7.
Why do these days mean more than any other? Why does a season of tests come down to just one? Only the greatest are allowed on this stage. A stage that in seconds can wash away past failures or successes. A stage made simply of turf and dirt. A stage we know as the Breeders' Cup.
Skywalker is still there, carrying a huge upset looming here, and they're coming down to the finish, and it is pleasantly perfect. Raven Pass and Frankie Dettori have won the class. Zenyatta, what a performance, one we'll never forget.
Brought to you by Fasig-Tipton, home of North America's first thoroughbred auction company. Fasig-Tipton, get in the game. And TwinSpires.com, the best online wagering experience in racing. Visit TwinSpires.com to sign up today. A light morning today at Santa Anita Park as we are at day 1 of Breeders' Cup 31 for the 8th time. The Breeders' Cup World Championships will take place at the foothills here at Santa Anita Park. As we welcome you to the Breeders' Cup, I am Scott Hazelton, really excited to be here once again, joined by my co-host Richard Migliori. And you know, the band's warming up. They're tuning their instruments, but I tell you what, this place is going to be jamming come 5:30 Eastern time when we've got our first Breeders' Cup race, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf.
It was already crowded coming in. I couldn't believe the cars backed up off of Baldwin trying to get in here. And I know it's Breeders' Cup Day when Scott's rocking the bow tie.
And well, here we go. We're going to start with the Breeders' Cup Classic, the feature race tomorrow, but we always start with the big money race. And just looking on Twitter, Richie, something that has yet to be discussed. It's amazing that we're just over 24 hours away from the Breeders' Cup Classic. And this is the first I'm hearing that if Shared Belief wins the Classic, he'll earn a $1 million cash bonus because of winning the Los Alamitos Derby and the Pacific Classic. So that's a pretty good little reason to...
A nice little bonus on top of everything else. And, you know, Shared Belief is undefeated. I wasn't sure I liked what I saw from his workouts on tape from Golden Gate, but I've seen a much higher energy level from him here, especially when he was schooling yesterday, and it's making me reassess my original thought.
That is him out on the track today. We go on to Bayern on the race course today. What have you made of the way that he's looked in his training since we saw him work out?
He looks terrific, and I think he's probably your pacemaker. I know Moreno's inside of him. I think he's more naturally fast than Moreno. I actually think he's going to get the drop on him out of the gate.
But as you have said, wouldn't maybe be a bad thing if he has a target based on the way that he's worked with company.
Yeah, he looks very comfortable when he's sitting right off a horse, and maybe it could work out that way.
And here's your boy, Tonalist, the New York Invader for Christophe Clement.
And it's everything you want to see. with a horse going to a big race. Look how collected he is. His head's bowed. He schooled yesterday. His coat's great. His weight's great. I really think this horse has actually gotten better since Saratoga.
So that's a quick peek at some of the key contenders for the Breeders' Cup Classic. But we're now going to turn our attention to the Friday card. But first, time for this Pursuit News update brought to you by OCD Pellets. Go to ocdpellets.com for more information as we welcome in Kate and Bradar.
Well, Scott, it was announced yesterday afternoon that Actabunte was out of the juvenile turf with a sore foot. Trainer Hugo Palmer reporting that it was extremely disappointing but not serious, and they'll point instead to the 2,000 guineas. That's all the outs we have at this point. Perhaps more to update after scratch time at 8 o'clock this morning, both for today and tomorrow. In the meantime, a little housekeeping announcement for Sweet Reason, who has been training all week with a protective eye cover. Marty McGee of DRF reporting on Twitter that Linda Rice is opting to race with that eye, or excuse me, Leah Giarmati reporting that she's going to use the eye cover for the race, despite the fact that the ophthalmologist had cleared her to run without it. Probably a precautionary measure more than anything. Now, a lot of horses out on the track bright and early before sunrise this morning with abbreviated training hours. Among them, Tonalist, warming up for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Trainer Christophe Clement getting a chance to see his charge here at Santa Anita. He just arrived yesterday. And Bel Galante warming up for the Distaff this afternoon. Rudy Rodriguez says just to take the edge off.
She went good, you know. I just want to take a little edge out of her because she's little starving in the para, so take him up, hop a little bit. So she went nice, just nice and easy. She looks comfortable and she looks happy. Time that we run him, she was all over the place, so we decided to take him out the day of the race, and look like it's working. You know, she still get a little bit more hyper, but look like it's working. So we don't want to change anything.
Well, with a chance of rain in the forecast tonight and into tomorrow, trainers like Shug McGahee with turf horses are keeping a keen eye on the weather.
You know, I think the track when he won the Man of War was good, and you know he hadn't had real fast tracks in the fall. But you know, I kind of brought him out here hoping to catch a really fast track that I thought he would get over really well, and you know, I'm excited about him having an opportunity to run over, you know, a real fast turf course. Joe Hirsch, he just made some mistakes. You know, he was on his wrong lead coming out of the turn, and he switched back onto his wrong lead when they got straightened away. And I think in those type of races, you just can't make those kind of mistakes and expect to win. And he wasn't beat that far, length and a half or something, and was third. And you know, I'm just hoping out here over, you know, a little bit more of a solid turf course that he'll be able to handle a situation a little bit better than he did in Joe Hirsch.
Now, once again, scratch time for both today's Breeders' Cup races and tomorrow, 8 o'clock Pacific time. So we have passed the deadline. If there's any news to report, we'll get it to you shortly. And in the meantime, there is a lot of Breeders' Cup action to take a look at, including the 4 races today. We're going to step away for a moment. We'll dissect those races up close and get a good look at all the horses in those races. But first, it is Halloween, and even the Breeders' Cup horsemen have a few tricks and treats. At least most of them do.
Most of the time we go out with the kids to trick-or-treat, and I guess now the wife got to do it herself.
It was part of their bargaining agreement to come out here because they missed it last year. So we're going to pick out a neighborhood and jump out of the car like everybody hates and get at it.
No, I'm dressed up every day. I'm the character.
We do it at church, or we do get together, and Megan's going out. She's back in Kentucky, and it's 32 and raining.
I saw that Rosie probably, she's been wearing her mask for like 2 weeks over there on the Clockers Corner. So.
You dressed up?
At times, yeah.
What did you dress up as?
What do you got, the Incredible Hulk?
What are they dressed as?
It's a surprise to me. My little one's going to be Mickey Mouse because he loves Mickey Mouse, and the other 2 I got to wait till later because I got in last night to see what the costumes they picked out.
Are you going to dress up?
I'm going to dress up as a trainer and nobody will believe it.
7:35 Eastern Time. Some of their main competition includes Don't Tell Sophia and Io Tappa, another local charge trained by John Sadler in this instance for Veronis Racing. But we are going to go through all 11 of these fillies and mares, Richie, and we start with L'Amour de ma Vie, a daughter of Dan Silly. Dan Silly has produced 1 Breeders' Cup winner. That was Dank last year in the filly and mare turf.
And it's interesting, this filly gets on the dirt for the first time. She has run well on synthetic, but Dan Seeley's a very good synthetic sire. I am assuming that the connections know that she likes the dirt. I mean, she has to prove it now, though.
Smoke lacking on the dam side, that's got to be part of it, you think. Tiz Midnight, she stepped up and ran a good second in her first try against Graded Stakes Company off of allowance victories.
Yeah, she ran really well against Beholder, and she got lucky that day that Io Tapper didn't break well, but you know, she could possibly be the pacemaker even if Io Tapper breaks well.
Well, here's Io Tapper, and as we've discussed all throughout the entire week for Joe Talamo, it all hinges on the way that she acts in the starting gate.
Yeah, and you know, we've said it several times now. She rocks back and forth in the gate, and you got to hope that you get lucky with her. She seems to do her best running if she's not on the lead, at least second in the clear.
Belle Galante, is there any shot that she can find herself in the front like she has in her Grade 1 races?
I don't see it happening, Scott. Not on this stage, not 2 turns here. She's a nice mare, but I think if she's going to run today, she's going to have to do it from off the pace, and she's never been as effective that way.
That was her out this morning. Unbridled Forever for Dallas Stewart. She's danced some big dances, but the reality, Richie, she's winless since she took the Silver Bullet Day back in January.
Yeah, and she's been well beaten a few times by Untappable. She'd have to really raise the level of her game to compete here.
Stanwick, the number 6 horse for John Sheriffs and the Mosses. 0 for 7 on the year. Her last win came in the turn back the alarm last year.
You know, early in the year, you thought, well, maybe this filly's going to have a big say in this division. And then when she came back off a little bit of a layoff in July at Saratoga, she ran well, but then she's kind of slid backwards since then, and she's going to have to find her best form once again.
Don't Tell Sophia, did she peak too soon in that last race?
Well, not from the way she's trained here and how she's looked. I think she's just very good right now. And was it a case that she just really loved Kentucky and blossomed and is going to carry that form over? Certainly, she'll be helped if there's some sort of pace meltdown.
Valiant Amelia for Gary Mandela. Rafael Bejarano takes the call. She's won nearly half of her starts, but this is by far and away the toughest race that she will ever have run in.
Yeah, it's really hard to figure out what she was running against, although I think she's worked really well here, and I liked the way they worked her the other day. Very orchestrated, in behind horses, took the dirt, eased out. I thought she regularly worked well.
Rhea Antonia, following some strange spotting as far as where she ended up running. Did she get back on track? Is that enough to convince you that she's a player here today off of her second in the Spinster?
Well, I go back to her last work at Keeneland, and she really, really looked good. And she looks like, to me, she's blossomed. And maybe she's a mare or a filly that gets good at the fall of the year.
She's one of the best-looking horses that you'll see here today. Untappable, a daughter of Tappet. Tappet's winners in the Breeders' Cup have mainly come with young horses. Hanson, Stardom Bound, and Tappet's Life. Tapizar did win the Dirt Mile back in 2012, so we'll see what Untappable can do here today in the Distaff.
And she's been a picture here, just coming up to the race in very good order, and will take a lot of beating.
And Close Hatches, a disappointing spinster effort to say the least back on October 5th, and here she is in the Longines Distaff. If she was to win that race, Richie, she would be the favorite for this race today.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know a lot of people are scratching their heads and saying, well, she had no excuse. Well, I think she did have excuses, and I'm going to go back to that 5-furlong workout, 2 works before the Spinster when she went 57 and change. That's not Bill Mott's style. I think that might have fried her a little bit. The track was a little deep at Keeneland, and I think she's training properly for this, and she looks great on the track. I think she rebounds.
You think that maybe that race, they let her run, and they were, the mindset was more focused on this day as it should be, as opposed to, squeezing the lemon too dry at Keeneland?
Well, we've seen Bill Mott do this before where, all right, we like to win. Of course, the Spinster's a Grade 1. It's an important race in its own right, but it still is a prep race, and we want to get to the Breeders' Cup in good order. And from what I've seen from her training, she got here in good order, and I think you're going to see the good Close Hatches today.
How likely is it to see one of these 2 fillies not win the race on the outside?
I think it's all about the 2 outside horses. I think Untappable and Close Hatches are probably going to run 1-2. I mean, there's some other nice fillies in here, but I think they're a little bit above just their caliber, their level, their class. And Close Hatches, the outside draw, I think forces Joel Rosario's hand to use her speed. And I think she runs better when she's allowed to go fast. She's able to maintain a high cruising speed.
Well, that is the Breeders' Cup Distaff. 7:35 Eastern Time is post time as we take you out to Clocker's Corner to Christina Blacker. And Christina, these fillies, they undoubtedly hold the keys to the Breeders' Cup Distaff, Close Hatches, and Untappable.
Yeah, that's right, Scott. They absolutely do. Really looks like a two-horse race on paper unless anybody else really jumps up in class this afternoon. And Millie Ball joins me now. That's what we've been talking about over the last couple minutes here, Millie, is that we have these two sort of standouts here, but we've been spoiled in the distaff the last several years with some amazing fillies and mares.
Well, you just have to go back to Beholder. She ended up being a two-time Breeders' Cup winner. Royal Delta as well. Zenyatta. What about the undefeated fillies coming into the race? We've seen My Miss Aurelia come into the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and even Princess of Soma. So you look at here in this particular field, they earn 5 grade 1s, 5 of them out of 11. So I think that this year it's probably not quite as tough of a field as, or we are a little bit spoiled, but still I think we've got 2 exceptional fillies in here. And don't forget, what is it, 14 Distaff winners have gone on to be older champion mare in the Eclipse Awards, so somebody is going to be a champion most likely after this race.
We've sort of been short on quantity but high on quality the last couple of years in the distaff. Time now for the Keys to the Cup, brought to you by Pin Oak Stud. You can head to pinoakstud.com for more information. Our Keys to the Cup today, we focus in on Untappable.
And Untappable, well, she's had 6 starts in 2014. Her earnings in 2014, over 1.7 million. That's the highest earnings this year of any of the distaffers. She won the Rachel Alexandra, the Kentucky Oaks, won the Mother Goose, and won the Grade 1 Cotillion. She's looking to become the 2nd filly to win the Kentucky Oaks and distaff in the same year. Rosie, she has a record of 1 for 5 in the Breeders' Cup, so that's 20% win success. Post position, well, I would be more concerned if Close Hatches had drawn inside and Untappable outside, but the fact that I think the 2 best fillies in this field both draw to the outside, I think they're both at the same disadvantage.
Well, and as you heard from Richie there, maybe it forces the hand of Joelle Rosario, and Close Hatches gets a little more aggressive and can be bold and brave on the front end if she can rebound off the disappointing race in the Spinster. It all leads up to the Breeders' Cup Distaff as the last Breeders' Cup race this afternoon here on the Friday card. We'll step aside for a timeout here on Pursuit of the Cup. When we get back, we'll focus in on the first of the Breeders' Cup races this afternoon, the Juvenile Turf Division. Will it go to the Euros, or will one of the Americans bring it home this year? Stay tuned.
Brought to you by Phasic Tipton, an all-time great place to buy all-time great racehorses. No one has a longer pedigree, and TwinSpires.com. Wager on the go with TwinSpires mobile smartphone app. TwinSpires.com, where players win. We continue our Breeders' Cup Friday discussion with the first of 4 Breeders' Cup races you will see this afternoon. This one will come to you at 5:25 Eastern Time. The Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Octabante, he is out of this race, the 9, so this brings this field down to a field of 14 with the Faithful Creek drawing in the number 15 off the also eligible. Hootenanny is the morning line favorite at odds of 3-1. But we start with Wet Sail for Qatar Racing, coming off of a 3rd in a small stakes race in England. This is a colt by Henry the Navigator.
Yeah, and he looks like he's having fun on the turf course here. I just haven't seen what I was able to see so clearly last year, Scott, with these juveniles. Nobody really stands out to me of the Europeans, where last year it was pretty crystal clear. This year, I'm not overwhelmed by anybody.
Daddy DT, he's back on grass, and honestly, Richie, he ran 5th in that front runner. That is one of the highest figures of any of these horses in this race, coming off of that 5th place finish when running on dirt.
And it speaks volumes for American Pharoah, who won that race. He was squeezed at the start. He was beaten 10 lengths. He's back on the grass where he is 1 for 1. And he gets Corey Nakatani, who is one of the better turf riders in the country.
Mike Smith rides Luck of the Kitten. He used his speed to win over this course in the Zuma Beach.
It's kind of interesting. He's a fast horse. He's never been any place but in front. But Wesley Ward's other horses has speed too. So which one's going to rate? Which one is capable of following the other? Because he doesn't want them to hook up.
Hootenanny for Wesley Ward. Frankie Dettori, actually commemorative, is the number 4 horse coming off of a Group 3 at Newmarket.
Yeah, and out of all the Europeans, I guess he's the one I'd look the closest at. He looks fine on the track. Again, just not that overwhelming feeling.
Now time for Hootenanny. Frankie riding for Wesley, second in the Prix Mornay, winner of the Windsor Castle. That was at Ascot back in June.
See, now I think he's more naturally fast than Luck of the Kitten, and he's got sprint-type speed. So I would assume he's going to wind up on the lead, and then Luck of the Kitten's going to have to follow in behind him. I'm not sure this horse actually wants to go this far.
Conquest Typhoon was second in the Gray Stakes. That was over the all-weather, but did win the summer back in September.
And I thought he was pretty impressive in the summer. He's got the right style, too. I think he'll be able to get a stalking position and not have too much to do. And Mark Cassidy looking to get off the Breeders' Cup schneid there.
War Envoy, the sire Warfront, same situation, looking for his first ever winner. Came close last year with the likes of Declaration of War as we take a look back at his fifth in the Jean-Luc Lagardère.
Yeah, and Ryan Moore is just such a great rider. You can't discount anything he puts on, he rides, and Aidan O'Brien, anything he puts on the track.
Offering Plan, the 8-horse Irad, riding for Chad Brown. Mike Dubb, Bethlehem Stables Impart, was third in the Pilgrim behind Imperia.
Yeah, and I thought he had no excuse. I thought he had a perfect trip there in the Pilgrim, and he just got run down by Imperium Vision Perfect. He's going to have to step his game up a little, although he really looks good training.
Octobante is out. Startup Nation, he could bounce back in a big way.
Yeah, again, you go back to that Pilgrim, though. He's going to have to move forward. I know he was further back off a slow pace, but I really don't think he had a lot of excuses.
I think that Godolphin goes back-to-back in this race. I love Imperia, and maybe I'm partial to Richie because I got a chance to see him debut at Saratoga, and I liked him in the Grade 3 Pilgrim.
And, he was unlucky not to win in Saratoga that day. And then he comes back and breaks his maiden in a stake race. Kieran McLaughlin's not a guy who runs maidens in stakes, and he obviously was very high on this horse, and he delivered a great late run. And I agree with you. I think he's very much the horse to beat.
He raced with Lasix in the Pilgrim, gets to race with Lasix today. International Star is the 12. Johnny Velasquez rides here for Mike Maker, winner of the Gray up at Woodbine.
He was so impressive breaking his maiden at Belmont in the spring that I really thought we were going to see big things from him, and he really kind of hasn't lived up to that yet, although he did win on synthetic last time.
Lon Ranger sat a perfect trip at Keeneland in the Grade 3 Bourbon and took advantage of it.
Yeah, he did take advantage of it. Chris Landaros, doesn't get that many opportunities yet in his young career on the big stage, but he's a rider that people will hear from. He's a good rider, and it's nice to see him get an opportunity like this.
Son of U.S. Ranger is Lawn Ranger, and then Danny Boy, the number 14, Julian, riding for Dale Romans. Tough draw. What is Julian going to have to do to overcome this outside post?
I think because the horse is a closer, he needs to just let him drop out, get as close as he can to the fence, and make one run and hope he gets lucky, because he's got really the worst of it. And we heard Gary Young say how much he liked him by the way he trained.
And Faithful Creek, drawing in off the also eligible, was third in the Golden Fleece at Group 3 at Leopardstown back on September 13th.
Yeah, and Kieran Fallon's got a big job on his hands, too, from that post position. I don't know how he's going to handle that. I think that horse possesses more speed, and he's going to have to kind of go forward and try to find a gap to break in somewhere. But that post is next to impossible. I think it's a shame, really. You draw that poorly, you get here to the big dance, you hope you get lucky at the draw, and it's out of your control.
Last 2 years, Europeans have won. They weren't allowed to race with Lasix, these 2-year-olds. Lasix is back into play, and does that help the Americans?
Yeah, I think so. I think it levels the playing field. Your horses here, everybody's actually got the same level playing field, because Lasix, those horses don't race with it. Our horses do. Now we've got horses like Imperia who improved second time with Lasix. I think it definitely levels the playing field. And the fact that I haven't been overwhelmed by any of the Europeans, I really think that if you like a horse from the U.S., don't be afraid of the Euros.
This race is going to be an awful bit of challenge for you, for those of you handicapping. This is really a tough race to get through, and why not let it be the first race, Breeders' Cup race of 2014 in Breeders' Cup 31. All right, when we come back here on Pursuit, we'll continue through the card, move over to race number 7. Today, the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile Grade 1, and we'll let you know if we think if Golden Sense can become the first repeat winner in the short history of the Dirt Mile. For the past 30 years of the Breeders' Cup, we have had 17 horses come back for more, win multiple Breeders' Cup races. Last year, we saw it with Groupie Doll in the Filly and Mare Sprint, along with Misdirection in the Turf Sprint, and Golden Sense since in a prime spot to add his name to that list and become number 18, with Rafael Bejarano riding, trained by Leandro Mora, and has a nice post position to utilize that speed.
Yeah, you're breaking so close to the turn. He's the most naturally talented speed horse in the race. I think he makes the lead easier than he did last year. And you go back to his Met Mile, he ran Palace Malice to a length off a layoff. And Palace Malice at the time was considered the best older horse in the country. I think Golden Sense has everything his own way. I just don't see anybody that can keep up with him early.
Carve is the 2. He comes off of a 5th in the Homecoming Classic, returning to a mile, a 2-turn mile. Could be key for this gelding by First Samurai.
Yeah, and he's got the right style. He's probably going to be lurking somewhere in behind Golden Sense, and you know at least if you're in behind him, you got live cover. He's not going to stop in your face. He's going to carry you a long ways. Horses look good on the grounds, and he's going to have to run his best race, but it's not impossible.
Johnny Velasquez rides Vickers in trouble. Does Johnny have to drop over and haunt Golden Sense the entire way?
You know, I suppose he could. I just don't think he's as naturally fast as Golden Sense, and I do think he'll get out-footed. He'll probably be laying second, but he's going to have to work hard to lay second there. He's ultra consistent. You gotta respect him, but I think he gets run off his feet.
Pants on Fire, he's 6 years old. He comes off of arguably the best race of his career, the way that he won at Charlestown.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a lot of distance between Charlestown and Santa Anita, no doubt. But he is a horse that looks like he's coming into his own at the right time at the ripe old age of 6.
He was 7th, beaten 12 lengths behind Golden Sense last year in the dirt mile. Handsome Mike is out. Golden Ticket is the number 6 horse. He comes off of a 6th in the Grade 2 Kelso.
Yeah, and you go 2 back when he won the left bank. Joe Rosario let him drop out the back, come with 1 run. He's a horse that needs to kind of get there late. He has to time his run. And if it's a big pace meltdown, they go too fast early, at least he'll be going in the right direction at the finish.
Bronzo, the Chilean import. I've heard a lot of people say that they like this horse in the dirt mile today.
Well, it's interesting, and he does get Lasix today. He has won 11 out of 19 starts, so he knows how to get to the winner's circle. I just don't know what he's been running against, so it's hard for me to really get a handle on it.
Kaleem Shaw and Bob Baffert sending out Fed Biz, a horse that has been so consistent over the course of his career here over the Santa Anita course.
Yeah, well beaten by Golden Sense 2 back at Del Mar and the Pat O'Brien, and ran Shared Belief to a neck with a little bit of an assist from a uncoupled stablemate.
Tapiture, son of Tappet for Steve Asmussen and Winchell Thoroughbreds, won the dirt mile a few years ago with a horse by the name of Tapizar.
Yeah, I really believe if anybody can upset Golden Sense, it's Tapiture. He looks phenomenal training. I like the turn back to a mile. I think he's well posted for him. I think he'll get into the race the right way. I think Tapiture actually is the horse to beat.
And Big Bane Theory rounds him out, winner of the City of Hope on turf. They're trying him on dirt here today for the first time in his career.
Big, beautiful horse. Looks a great deal like his sire, Artie Schiller, who also trained extremely well on the dirt, but wasn't as good on it as he was the turf. Big Bane Theory is going to have to show me he can do this on the dirt and get a good hold of it.
Trained by Carla Gaines, ridden this afternoon once again by Joe Talamo. So Golden Sense with that speed. Do you think that he may end up being the shortest price that we see this Breeders' Cup?
I really do, and I think he's probably your most likely winner of both Breeders' Cup days. I thought, well, the only way he probably can lose is if he gets an unlucky draw. Well, he got the best of everything. He got the inside draw, and some people say, well, he's on the rail, he's forced. He's just so naturally fast, Scott. All Bejarano has to do is open his hands. He's going to be 2 in front in the first turn.
When we come back here on Pursuit of the Cup live from Breeders' Cup 31, our Day 1 edition of BC 31, we will jump over to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly Turf and sort through this field of 14. Post time for the Juvenile Filly Turf, 6:50 Eastern Time. Last year, the late Chris Cilliam put on a show in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf, and this is how the field looks for 2014. Sunset Glow is 7-2 for Victor Espinoza and Wesley Ward in Ten Brock Farm, coming off of a victory in the Del Mar Debutante as well as the Sorrento, and it doesn't hurt that she was second behind Cursory Glance in the Albany back at Ascot, Royal Ascot, in late June. But we start things off in this field with Partisan Politics for Chad Brown. She comes off of a 4th in the Ms. Grillo. Was she just given too much to do that afternoon?
Yeah, she really was, especially with the half and 51 and 2 3/4 and 15. And then she had encountered a lot of traffic through the stretch, and finally late, you could see she kind of got a little room and she really ran through the wire. Now, I don't know if she was going to beat Lady Eli that day, but it would have been a horse race.
Osela, she comes off of a victory at Newmarket for Al Chicago Racing.
Yeah, filly with a lot of foundation. This will be her 7th start. She gets Frankie Dettori, and if she can work out a trip from that good inside draw, she maybe, out of the Euros, I think could be the one you need to look at.
Up next is the daughter of Exchange Rate, Sunset Glow, the anticipated favorite coming in off of consecutive graded stakes victories.
And she's a world traveler. She won at Presque Isle. She's been to Belmont, Royal Ascot, Del Mar. Now here she is at Santa Anita. And I do think she'll like the mile. I think she'll probably get a nice trip, too, under Victor Espinoza.
Lady Eli, she's already proven that she likes a mile. And on further, she's 2 for 2. Both wins coming at a mile and a 16 for Chad Brown.
Yeah, this is a very good filly. But she got an absolutely perfect trip where Partisan Politics had a less than perfect trip last time. So I think you can close the gap a bit, and Partisan Politics is 15-1 on the morning line. This filly was a bit washy schooling. It'll be interesting to see how she reacts in the paddock today.
Isabella Sings, a daughter of Escandrea. This will be the first start for the young stallion in the Breeders' Cup.
And a filly that possessed a lot of speed. And she went 21 and change on the turf at Belmont sprinting, then came back and got kind of an odd trip last time. She wasn't part of the fray early, kind of made this big middle move, and then got caught late. Be interested to see if she actually really wants to go this far.
Sivolier for Chad Brown and Marty Schwartz, daughter of See the Stars. It'll give the great See the Stars his first starter in the Breeders' Cup card.
And whoever buys Marty Schwartz's horses in Europe really knows how to scout them out and find horses that'll really fit in America. Gets Gary Stevens, which would be one of the most amazing. It might even cap last year's story, him winning the Classic if he was to win this.
Reina de Bateria is the 7 for 3 Chimneys Farm, Graham Motion, and Joel Rosario. She won the Jessamine at Keeneland.
And got a pace to run at that day. Probably will get a pace to run at today. And Joel Rosario, I think one of his strong suits is being a chameleon, allowing horses to get comfortable. I think she'll drop out and come with a big run for Graham Motion.
Nikki's Brown Miss, she disappointed in the Ms. Grillo after winning at Kentucky Downs in a $200,000 stake.
Yeah, and she's another one that was probably compromised by the pace, but I really think she's going to have to really improve to compete in here.
20-1 on the morning line on Nikki's Brown Miss. Cisco Torres in town to ride. Lady Zuzu is the 9 for D. Wayne Lucas. The first time they tried her on grass, she was 3rd. They tried her in the spin-away, wanted no part of that sloppy course, and then she broke through and broke her maiden at Keeneland in October.
Yeah, and a big run. She showed a lot of speed that day. I think she's probably going to have to revert to some rating tactics. But, boy, she very, very kind of stoic filly walking there, really composed.
Quality Rocks, the 10 for trainer Bill Mott. Liscano takes the call. She was 2nd as she was run down by Reina de Bateria in the Jessamine.
And Bobby Flay, his group of friends, Flavor Racing, bought 50% of this filly. So somebody saw something they liked, and she was no match for Reina de Bateria last time, but she's probably going to lay up close.
Conquest Harlanate, she's a dual-graded stakes winner in her last 2.
Yeah, hasn't done much wrong for Mark Cassie. Not crazy about the draw. She's going to have to work out some sort of trip under Patrick Husbands, but I really like the way she looked all week training.
A daughter of Harlan's Holiday is Conquest Harlanate. Tammy the Torpedo, a filly by More Than Ready, owned by Long Lake Stable, yet another Chad Brown trainee.
Yeah, Chad Brown is just an embarrassment of riches with his young horses on the turf. This filly was so impressive, brushing around the whole field in Saratoga under Joe Rosario. She laid up closer to a slow pace last time. She gets pace today, drops out. Maybe she comes with that run again.
Prize Exhibit, the 13, Jamie Osborne conditions this filly. She's already run 8 times during her 2-year-old season.
Yeah, another European 9th start. You don't see that much from Americans. They don't usually run that much, but she doesn't look any worse for the wear. She's carrying good weight. Gets a very poor draw, though. They're going to have to work out some kind of trip.
And Qualify rounds them out for Aidan O'Brien. Ryan Moore takes the call, winner of a Group 3 at the Curragh late last month.
Yeah, and you can see here when she was training here, kind of looking at things, ducking about a bit. I wasn't overly impressed with what I saw physically, and then when she got this draw, I said, well, on top of not like being impressed with her and how she looked on the racetrack, now she gets the worst draw possible. And her looking around in the morning, now she's got nobody outside of her. I think it just lends to her looking around even more, and it's going to hurt her trip that much more, even though the post is horrible to begin with.
Who's going to win this? I need a pick for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly Turf.
It's so wide open. I mean, it's hard to come up with one, but feet to the fire, I'm going to go with Partisan Politics. She's going to get a better trip. She's going to work out a trip with Castellano, and she's got a great draw.
Yeah, drew post 10 in the race where she was 4th in the Ms. Grillo. Draws the rail here this afternoon in the Juvenile Filly Turf. All right, when we come back again here on Pursuit live from Santa Anita Park on Breeders' Cup Friday, it'll be time for the International Report. Brought to you by Fasig-Tipton, an all-time great place to buy all-time great racehorses. Get in the game. And TwinSpires.com, your home for online wagering. Visit TwinSpires.com and join today for a $100 sign-up bonus.
Welcome back to Pursuit of the Cup. Time now for the International Report. 4 Breeders' Cup races today, and 2 of them for the juveniles on the turf. So fortunately for the International Report, Millie Ball joins me once more, and Fanny Salmon comes to the show for us once again this afternoon. Fanny, we talk about these races, and when we look at the history, we really do need to focus on the Euros in the juvenile turf and the Fillies turf.
Well, they've won 5 of 7 previous editions of this race. Aidan O'Brien, of course, scoring 2 with Roth and George Vancouver. Ryan Moore has a good record as well with 2 wins, and Frankie Dettori, although he will be riding Hootenanny, has 2 wins in that race, and that's we count it for the Euros.
The juvenile turf, the first of the Breeders' Cup races, so we'll start there. We'll take a look at the entries as they stand, and remember when you heard from the news with Caton, Activante is a scratch, so that does allow Faithful Creek to get in. Millie, we're going to start with Wet Sail and see if Charlie Fellows can join this new club that they're making called Trainers from Europe, winning their first races at the Breeders' Cup, named Charlie.
Yeah, the Charlie Club. Yeah, Charlie Fellows, his first year as a trainer as well. He trains in Newmarket and he brings Wet Sail. Had a really great conversation with him. He said, listen, the horse ran against 23 horses in that very rich sales race. He finished 3rd, crying out for more distance, which he's going to get. The concern is he's never run around a bend, but he's a very small horse and very athletic.
Fanny, can Charlie Hills win another one with commemorative this year?
Well, that would be nice to keep his 100% record in the Breeders' Cup race. Look at commemorative, we see him here. He's a good size, sturdy 2-year-old. He comes here lightly raced, but he's got solid form.
Millie, how about War Envoy? He seems to really fit the profile of a winner of this race.
Very much so. When you think of the 2 winners that Aidan has had, George Vancouver and Roth, all of these 2-year-old males were looking for their first graded win when they came out to the States.
Let's hear from the trainer, Aidan O'Brien, on the chances of War Envoy in this year's juvenile turf.
Good form, he's good draw and he's in good form. The fast ground and the mile will suit him well, we think, so hopefully.
Fanny, Faithful Creek draws in, as I mentioned. What do we know about this horse from Brian Meehan's barn?
Well, I saw him in Deauville when he made a huge comeback to finish 3rd, which was a much better impression than actually the performance, the paper said. He traveled to Ireland where he placed 3rd to a very sharp Aidan O'Brien colt. And I had a chance to speak to Brian Meehan this morning, and he said he was really happy with the preparation and happy to get in the race.
Brian Meehan already with a couple of wins on the Breeders' Cup program, both in the turf. Okay, ladies, so who do you pick in the juvenile turf?
Well, I think the Wet Sail is going to be a fabulous price, so I'm going to go there. I like the way he's been training out here for Charlie Fellows. As I mentioned, he's a very balanced horse, and I think he'll save all the ground in the world on the rail. He's got enough speed to sit a tactical trip, and they'll go faster than he's used to back there. And then he's got a good kick to him, and I think he's going to corner on rails like we saw Dag do last year in the Filly and Mare turf.
How about you, Fanny?
I have to go with Hootenanny. I absolutely loved his 2nd place in the Primorny in Deauville. I think Wesley Ward has done a tremendous job with him. And talk about Frankie Dettori. We've had some comeback jockeys in Gary Stevens and others, and I think he's ready to win another Breeders' Cup.
All right, so Hootenanny for Fanny, and for Millie Wet Sail, I'm going to take War Envoy in the juvenile turf. Let's move on to the ladies, the juvenile fillies turf. Here is a look at the morning line, a mile the distance on the grass, Sunset Glow. The morning line choice for Wesley Ward at 7-2. Victor Espinoza will be aboard. But we start our discussion, Fanny, with Osela for Richard Hannon. She was 5th in the Moigler stud at the Curragh, but only defeated a length and a half there.
No, and that was one of the best races for 3-year-olds that we've, for 2-year-olds, sorry, that we've had. You see her here with Frankie Dettori in the saddle, and that's always a plus. Especially, I think he's in that kind of mindset. That and look how good she's looking right now. Richard Hannon says the trip will suit her. She will need to break well though.
Millie, how about Cevalier, Gary Stevens' first mount back, and Marty Schwartz so successful with these horses from Europe?
He has. I talked to him about that. He's been doing that since about 2005, but he loved the pedigree on this filly. See the stars on top. Sifru underneath. Interestingly, Sifru the Dam was a very good filly in France, came to the United States and couldn't replicate her form for Graham Motion. Cevalier is going to try and replicate her form and better it. And of course, these connections have had success. Chad Brown and Martin Schwartz in the Breeders' Cup.
Fanny Prize exhibit for Jamie Osborne. He'll have Toast of New York tomorrow and this filly today.
Exactly. Well, she's probably the less credentialed of the 2-year-old fillies in the juvenile turf. She has 2 wins for 8 starts, but both of them were convincing by 9 lengths. She's looking for a first Group 1 victory. Having said that, she was just 3rd in a Group 3.
How about Qualify, Millie? Another of the Aidan O'Briens. This one for Lewis and Kate Rowan.
Yeah, Aidan O'Brien's 0 for 16 with females. He did have 2 runner-ups in this division before, Westphalia and Heart Shaped. She was going to go to the Fillies Mile at Newmarket, didn't get her ground, and arrives here. Here's Aidan O'Brien.
Qualified good form. She's drawn a little bit wider than we would like, but fast ground on a mile on grass we think will suit her really well.
We move ahead to the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff, the final of the Breeders' Cup races for this Friday program. We talked about Untappable earlier on the show, 5-2 on the morning line. But down along the inside, a real mystery horse in L'Amour de ma Vie. She's 15-1 on the morning line. Fanny, it seems strange. We have this filly trained by a Swedish trainer in France. Why do they bring her to run on the dirt in the Distaff?
First of all, she's bred for the dirt, and as you mentioned earlier, she does have a bit of her breeding in her. You can see the smoke lacking. She had her 4 starts at 4 years old. She actually was trained in the U.S. at 2, and she was a very late developing filly, which in the U.S. doesn't really go well. So unfortunately for her, she was sold, shipped to Europe. They gave her time to develop, and she's done really well for Pierre Brandt. Of course, she has never raced in that kind of company. She had never raced on the dirt. She raced on the Tupida in Dubai. They tried her over there in Chantilly. They have a dirt track. They wanted specifically to try to see how she would react to the kickback, and she did really well. That's why she's here now. She could be a good price at 15-1. If you want an Arkong, you're not getting the 99-1, but you know she might be worth a shot. She's doing extremely well. She's a very strong, and she's got a very long stride, but you know she's going to be facing really tough opposition.
She will be a price if you like her, and as Fanny mentioned, you can see that smoke glacken in L'Amour de ma Vie, the dam sire there. We'll step aside for another timeout here on Pursuit of the Cup. When we come back, time for the Breeders' Cup Social Circle and our Distaff picks from the panel. We'll be right back.
The Breeders' Cup invites everyone to get in the social circle. Be sure to use hashtag BC14 or hashtag BCSocial. And this from Breeders' Cup early this morning before the sun rises. The best is yet to come. From Sue Finley of Thoroughbred Daily News, a quick sneak peek of their cover with this artistic rendering of the occasion by horse racing's favorite artist, Peb. And then the Racing Post got into the spirit of things yesterday. This was their cover for today, a sneak peek of the Fright Night coming up in the Breeders' Cup with a couple of famous Euro jockeys as Dracula. Also getting into the spirit of Halloween is Sagamore with their Headless Horseman. Don't try this at home. Words to the wise. Finally, from Epsom Downs, a little flashback to a Breeders' Cup favorite, heroine, 2-time Breeders' Cup turf winner, Ouija board as kind of a hunch play. If you're looking for one on today's program, perhaps it's in the Distaff. It could be Tis Midnight. Who knows? And again, remember hashtag BC14 or hashtag BCSocial, and you might even get up on the big board today or tomorrow as part of the Players Show. And right now, no scratches we're hearing from the racing department outside the ones we've already announced. The also eligibles age list does scratch into the body of the Breeders' Cup, but otherwise no new news. And as far as contenders, looking ahead to the big race today, the Distaff, ultimate Breeders' Cup race on this Friday. I like Untappable, a heavy favorite in my heart. Last year, she didn't fare well. I think a different racetrack, a different year, a whole different occasion. I'm on the Untappable bandwagon. How about you, Christina?
Kate, and I'm right there with you, and part of the reason I like Untappable is because of the Thorograph figures. She has run 3 consecutive zeros in a row, which means that her Haskell was not a bad race, given all the trouble that she had. I do think she was actually a little bit better and running a little faster in through Louisiana and the Kentucky Oaks, but she is the horse to beat today. Untappable for me. Millie, where do you land?
I'm going with Untappable as well. I think she's a far more mature filly. I think she can rate a little bit better than we saw her try and rate in the juvenile fillies when throwing her head around in the air. She's unbeaten against the girls this year in 2014, so I'm going Untappable. But Richie, I understand you have a difference of opinion in the distaff.
Well, Millie, I got to change it up a little bit, and I'm going with Close Hatches, drawing right outside of her. I respect Untappable, and she'll be very tough to beat. But Close Hatches, I think Joel Rosario is going to have to use her speed. She looks great on the track, and that's where I'm going to land, on Close Hatches.
I'm going to have to stay with Untappable because this filly has been so good over the course of 2014, and I like this outside draw for her because Rosie, it seems, has been so intent in keeping her in the clear in her races, and that's exactly where she's going to be. I think she's not going to be far off of Close Hatches with that high cruising speed that she has, and I think she's just going to wear her down late in stretch. It's not going to be a flashy win. It's going to be a very powerful win, though, by Untappable, and I think that they're probably 5 lengths clear of the rest of this group once they're crossing the wire here at Santa Anita in the distaff.
Yeah, I think it's a 2-horse race, so it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. Close Hatches is going to have to get over and not get hung wide because you can't afford to give ground away, especially when a filly like Untappable is the one chasing you.
8th time that we've hosted the Breeders' Cup here at Santa Anita Park, the 3rd consecutive year. Back to 2012, 2013, and now here in 2014, we've had 79 Breeders' Cup races, over 860 starters, over $136 million handed out in purse money, and they have handicapped close to $1 billion in handle. I think that they are going to get to that billion mark here at Santa Anita with the handle. What do you think? Especially with how deep these fields are.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some of the most competitive races, particularly the juveniles today. I don't know how you sort that out, and it's going to take a lot of luck.
For the team outside, including Christina Blacker, Millie Ball, Fanny Salmon, as well as Kate and Bradar. He's Richard Migliori. I'm Scott Hazelton. Enjoy the day. We will be with you throughout the entire day for coverage of Breeders' Cup 31 right here on HRTV and HRTV.com.